So today we're going to be talking about how we get trapped in the victim mindset, how to get untrapped, what happens that causes some of us to never get out of the stage in which we are perpetually feeling completely overwhelmed and bowled over by what's happened to us. I had this fascinating conversation and apologize. I'm right now trying to do two things at once. I had a technical glitch, common, unfortunately, but and I'm trying to recover from it, which is why I was like 1 minute late. So thank you so much, you guys, for your patience. But we're going to talk about healing after betrayal, what happens in these toxic relationships, and how we can recover better when we get out of a betrayal, out of a toxic relationship. And you may have noticed, in fact, I just saw a colleague of mine post a content this today about how you don't need to be friends with somebody who never stops talking about the drama, how that some people can actually bring us down and make things worse. I found that video painful. I know a lot of us feel that way, especially if you've never experienced abuse. This may be a completely astonishing thing that you wonder, like, why does this person never stop talking about this? I know that when I first was recovering, it was the top of mind issue all the time, top of mind. And I think I was that way probably for close to 3 years, where it was everything I could think about constantly. Just it was the prevalent issue. I don't know if I can say that right, but the prevalent issue that just was driving me nuts. And so I know that a lot of us can get into this mindset that is so painful, and we don't know that we're doing it. And we don't also know how to stop doing it. So I'd like to really get into that today better, like what's happening that's causing this preoccupation with the event of our life, why we just seem to be stuck, completely stuck by and paralyzed by abuse, but also by betrayal. So to first start out, I think it really makes the most sense for us to define betrayal. I mean, most of us will say, I know what betrayal is, but I really want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And it's interesting to me, this is just a side comment. It's interesting to me the number of people that do betrayals and think that they're a no big deal thing, and then are shocked that you're feeling like you're scraping yourself off the bottom of somebody's shoe. I know I don't know if you guys have seen that video where they say that it feels like someone has shoved you out of the plane and then you've fallen without a parachute and you hit the ground. Maybe you're even dragged for a while. I'll tell you, betrayal feels like that. It just feels devastating to have somebody that you love, trust, that you've turned to do this massive injury, this gut-wrenching, horrific, brutal thing to you. So here's the definition of betrayal. I thought it was a really good one. Betrayal is the shattering of trust by someone you've counted on, someone who was supposed to protect you, not harm you. It was not supposed to happen. And it's not just what happened, but it's about who did this to you and the emotional devastation that follows when your reality is ripped away from you. And when it comes to narcissistic abuse, betrayal often is ongoing and has multiple layers. So there's patterns of manipulation, deceit, tremendous emotional injury that leaves us as the survivor questioning our own worth, questioning our own instincts, and even questioning our own insanity. And here are some forms of abuse forms of betrayal. I know I get used to using the word abuse, but we're really talking about betrayals today. Here are common forms of betrayal. This is not a complete list, please know that. But this is repeated lies, gaslighting, and hidden truths, cheating or emotional affairs, when they smear your reputation to friends, family, and even your own children, when they withhold love and use it as a reward or a punishment, when there's been financial deceit and sabotage, when they've exploited your vulnerabilities and disclosed your secrets, when they've threatened abandonment and punished you whenever you've asserted any of your needs, when they've used your empathy against you by twisting your compassion into a weapon, And here's another one that we often don't think of as a betrayal, but it's a massive betrayal, and that is publicly presenting themselves as the good one, the nice one, while privately they're demeaning and devaluing you. I thought I understood betrayal. I really did. But when I discovered, the night that I discovered that my partner had been cheating on me, not just once, not that that makes it any better, but when this woman contacted me to indicate that they had been dating 3 months, I felt like my world was a snow globe, and that the truth this woman was presenting to me was another snow globe. It's like two worlds in a glass container is what it felt like. And it felt like these two worlds collided together. There's what I thought I knew about what was really happening about my life. You know, suddenly you replay everything that you've done. You replay where you went, where you were, who you spoke to whom. You replay everything. You even replay your days, your schedule, like meetings. And I mean, one of the things that I had wondered was I had an eye doctor's appointment. I needed to drive there. We just sold his vehicle, so we were living on one vehicle. He claimed he needed to meet up with a colleague from work to help this individual with their resume because they were looking for a new job. And he took the car, and he knew I had that appointment, but he didn't come back in time. So I then had to take Uber over there while I'm madly texting him, where are you? Where are you? And by the way, it was my car he was driving, although we are now technically married. So in a way it was his car, but you know, you would have thought because he was no longer working, that my day's plans, my appointment, my doctor's appointment would have rated higher, right? On the schedule of priorities. So I'm texting frantically, where are you? Where are you? And I don't hear from him, nothing. And I'm thinking, well, that's really weird. He's supposedly working on a resume with a guy. He can't answer his own phone. I then go to the appointment. I finish the appointment. I walk out to the parking lot. I text him my address. Again, no message. I have to take an Uber home. So now I've had to pay for the appointment, pay for whatever changes I'm having to my contact subscription, my prescription, and I'm paying for the rides to and from this appointment. Would you know, he was with somebody that day. And here I am thinking he's doing a noble thing, helping somebody, and he's with somebody. It's like those moments. You start to replay every one of those moments. Like, where were you really with a friend, helping them with a resume? Were you really out with your family trying to move somebody? Were you really like stuck at work and having a really big, catastrophic event going on at work? You start to literally replay everything that ever happens in your life, and you realize a lot of it's not true. And it feels like when this happens, and I know for those of you who've never experienced this level of betrayal, it's devastating. I actually lost consciousness. It was about 4 a.m. when I saw the message, and I really kind of came to around 6 a.m. I just like fuzzed out. I literally, the sense of the crashing of realities was so devastating that my mind just said, can't compute, go offline. So I lost track of time. I lost track of myself. And I woke up to the sound of noise in the room, and I realized it was my teeth chattering, that my body had gone into such a state of shutdown that I had gotten radical. I mean, we were in a warm, warm honeymoon. It was on my honeymoon, by the way. This was a late honeymoon. We were in Jamaica at the time. So the room was kept a little cold, and I was under covers, but I woke up shaking and teeth chattering and like sweating. I mean, full on fight or flight, catastrophic shutdown mode. That was what my body was in. That's what betrayals feel like. They're not a little thing. They're devastating, and it starts to cause you to question everything that you've ever known about yourself, about your life, and about this person that you have a relationship with. And then the other crazy thing is that you think then there's an easy decision here. The decision is, I just need to get out. This person obviously is dangerous and cannot be trusted, but you've built a life with this individual. You have everything has been contingent on the two of you going forward. As I mentioned, we already sold a car. The house was being sold. I was in mid transition to moving to Mexico. I had my visa waiting for me. I had so long to get into the country. I had a property I was purchasing. I mean, these moments happen in a for you, it may be you're pregnant. Maybe you've moved across the country. I read this one woman moved across the country, her whole life across the country, gets there, finds out her boyfriend doesn't know if he's into it, and she has to move herself back across country again after this. So you guys all know what you've gone through, the complete disruption this happens on our relationship so it's not just what happens to our sense of self, but it happens to us in these relationships. It happens to relationships with other people. I mean, some of you tell me about betrayals that happen at work. You may end up finding that there is some massive level of deceit or embezzlement happening at some high levels, or maybe the integrity of the company is not what you thought. I mean, I lived through watching people lose everything with Enron. I mean, I know I'm dating myself, but that these types of things have just sometimes for some of us, and this is back to why we get stuck in the victim mentality, which is what today's topic is about. Sometimes some of these devastations have there is no end to the consequence. It is a level of betrayal. There's no takebacks. I mean, when a lifetime of financial nest egg has been put away and now is gone, you don't recover from that. That's the word I'm looking for. Some of these losses are irrecoverable. We're not going to build back you can't get somebody back who's now gone, not in your life, because they're no longer around. You're not going to get money that you've saved your entire life in your late stage of your life back. I mean, there are things that you're not going to get your innocence back. There's just things about all of this that are irrecoverable when we survive this. So I got a chance to talk to Dr. Debbie Silber, Silber, Debbie Silber. She has the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute, I think is the name of her company. And she did some research and found that there are 5 stages of recovery from betrayal. She experienced betrayal herself and decided, you know what, I really want to look into figuring out what happens when there's this massive betrayal. And then also she noticed when she was looking at it that some of us never move through all 5 stages. And when we don't, we get stuck inside the victim mentality, which is where I started today, which is talking about those of us who seem to sort of sit on top of the loss, sit on top of the catastrophic situation, and then we don't find ourselves again, and we don't know how to meaningfully connect with the rest of the world in a different way. We become defined by the tragedy. Now, I want everyone to know that the tragedy is the tragedy. And when that happens, I'm not saying we're not allowed to be victims. Yes, you are victimized. But the goal is to move from victim to survivor. And unfortunately, not all of us make this shift. So I really want to break this down to talk about what happens that causes us not to make the shift from victim to survivor. So stage 1, according to Dr. Debbie Silber's work, is that's what I just described. It's the complete shock and utter breakdown of your old life. You finally know what's been happening. You've sensed it. In fact, if you met me before we went on that delayed honeymoon, I was home walking through the house and would watch the iWatch that I gave him as a gift light up. And I'm thinking, it's the workday. Why is he being texted in the workday? This just doesn't make sense. He should be working. He doesn't have time to respond to my text. So why are there text messages causing this phone, this little this watch to light up over and over and over? I sensed something was wrong. Right back in the middle of the dating. Only about 3 months into the dating, I was bothered enough by some mysterious thing that I couldn't put words to that I hired a private investigator. I spent the money hiring a private investigator to answer the question, was he living alone and is he married? Why would I ask that? Something inside me was making me doubt something. And I don't know what it was. I can still today, I can't look back and tell you why I doubted, why I had questions, but I felt it. I felt something was not quite right. So we feel that, but now we know the betrayal finally answers the question. What's wrong? This is what's wrong. Now I found out what's wrong. He's been cheating. He's a liar. He has multiple relationships. I had previously to that felt like disoriented and uneasy, but I didn't know why my nervous system was dysregulated. Now I got the answers to know why my nervous system was saying, Kerry, wake up, something's wrong here. So that's stage 1. It's called shock and breakdown of your old life. Then stage 2, and you guys that can all really relate to this, is the struggle for survival. This is when you go into the full-on crisis mode and you're trying to manage all the fallouts and keep it from completely falling into chaos. For me, as I just mentioned, I was mid-move. I had a visa waiting for me in Mexico. When you get a visa with another country, there's often 2 parts. It's what you do in the United States with the consulate of that country, and then you got to get into the country, go to go back to the immigration office and complete the process. So I was like mid-stage. I had so many days I had to get into the new country, get to the immigration office and complete the process, or all of that, all the money, all the time, everything was a waste of time. And let me tell you, it's a lot of effort. So you don't want to lose that. So that had just happened. I had just sold a house. I was selling my car. Everything literally was up in the air. And often you guys are in the same position. Maybe it's you don't have another job and this is the only job you have. And now you find out you can't work here because it really violates something integral yes, I said that word right. Integral to who you are. Maybe you're just had your second baby and bought a new house with this person and you suddenly found out that everything they've been saying is wrong. I don't know if you guys listen to Betrayal Weekly. I was on it in October, by the way. So they told my story called Dr. Kerry in mid-October. But I love listening to those stories, partly because they're devastating. Like one of the women, this guy had been buying houses where supposedly had them renting out as Airbnb. And no, that's not what he up to at all. He was up to something catastrophically different. Another story that to me devastated me because I couldn't imagine doing this as a parent was this woman was going to college, taking out loans to go to college, didn't know that her mom and dad was taking loans out in her name to live on and racked up, I think, loans in excess of $250,000 when she got out of school. She owned as school loans because her parents weren't working and used her loans to live on without her permission in her name. We get on the other side of these and we're literally in a struggle for survival. And this is a stage where you feel like it's your fault. You wonder, how could you have been so stupid or idiotic? You end up you kind of try to rationalize the abuse. I remember there was a moment where I actually literally said, Betrayal Weekly is a podcast. It's put out by iHeart Entertainment and it's on Apple. So if you want to listen to Betrayal and Betrayal Weekly, it's also on Hulu, by the way. Hulu carries the show. They have like 2 big seasons. Somebody was just asked, is a podcast? Yes, it's a podcast. So I remember in the middle of that, when I realized that everything I had thought was true about us wasn't true, I remember thinking, Kerry, you have 2 options. You could bury your head in the sand and pretend this person didn't write you. You could wake up and act like nothing happened and go home and move on and life would go back probably close to normal. Not normal because now you know, but it would go closer to normal, at least between you and my new husband. It would, so-called feel normal, or I could face it. I could look at him and say, hey, I just got contacted by somebody. I know you've been cheating. I literally saw those as 2 big options in the road. Now, I had lived with my grandmother had gotten secretly married years ago. She's no longer living, so she doesn't care. I don't think that I'm telling you this, but she had a marriage that was short-lived and then ended in divorce, and she never told her family about it. Never. We never knew. You know how we found out? It was after she died, and I think one of us pulled her records or something, and we found out when you pull up her name, we even know the name of the guy she married. I never even knew that she never talked about it. But that living with somebody who keeps those types of secrets is weird. It does strange things to you. And that wasn't the kind of life that I wanted. So here I'm facing two alternatives: pretend, be an ostrich, bury my head in the sand and pretend this never happened, or face it head on and see what happens. And I decided to face it head on and see what happened. Now, it was not pretty. It was 2 more years of incredible ugliness. But that second stage of survival is devastating. So here's what happens. Some of us don't ever get out of it. Some of us get stuck and we can't make it into stage 3. Because stage 3 is where you start to know that something's got to change. And it's the beginning of transformation. You start to go in. It's like you shift. The word in it's not quite aligning, but I want to share it anyway. So and I know it's Easter week for a lot of us, so we're kind of thinking about the Passion of Christ and all of that. But the word repentance doesn't mean just say I'm sorry that something bad happens. It actually means a turning into a new direction. It's a stopping and turning. Well, sometimes we need that kind of repentance with ourselves where there's a stopping and turning. So it's not that we need to we did something bad. No, something bad happened to us, but we need a shifting in direction in our life. Some of us can't. And what happens is then the tragedy, this horrible betrayal, becomes who you are. And you get stuck there. And then you never cease asking, how could this happen? How could someone do this to me? What did I miss? And it's almost like, this is what it felt like to me. I'd be curious if it felt like this to you. It felt like to me, I was running around the world tattling on him. And partly, honestly, the reason I wrote the book, Love You More, was because I wanted all of you to know what this horrible person did to me. And in fact, if you read a previous version of it, it read like a tattletale. It read like he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. And people who read the first draft said, I don't know why you married the guy, because he was so awful. I mean, it was bad from the get-go. So why did you get in a relationship with him? And what I forgot was, because I was so angry and so much in the mindset of what happened to me, I was just telling all the highlighted worst moments, and I wasn't sharing all the great moments. That this was actually started out a love story, although it really wasn't a love story. It was actually a story of betrayal. But to me, it started out like a fantasy that turned into my worst nightmare. And because I was in that mode of tattling and telling, I was then focused on the bad and I couldn't see the whole picture. And it actually took them saying, I don't get this book. This book makes no sense to me. That for me to oh, I didn't tell you the story. I'm just so upset that I want you to know what horrible things happened to me. So I'm going to jump ahead before I tell you the rest of the transformation stages, because I really want us not to get stuck in that stage. It's really important for us not to get stuck in the mindset. So one of the reasons why we don't recover is because we have a collapse of our identity of who I am. So why we get in the victim mindset is the identity becomes shaped by the relationship, especially if we initially were fawning or over-functioning for this person. When we lose the relationship, we suddenly feel empty and lost after the betrayal. We end up saying, who am I? If I stop pleasing people, stop pleasing this person, if after all I did for this person and this is what they did to me, it feels like your sense of self was built on sand and that the betrayal washed away everything that you thought you were. The other problem is you lose your reality anchors. You don't know anymore what's real and who's real. Because the abuse and the betrayal use gaslighting and manipulation, now you're not for sure what's true, and including you don't know what's true about you. You end up wondering, how could I have been so naive? How could I not seen it? What if I got that wrong? What else did I get wrong? So it destabilizes your internal compass, and every decision, even the smallest decision, suddenly starts to feel terrifying when this happens. And you internalize the shame and blame. I'll tell you, as a psychologist, guys, I felt like the biggest idiot. Seriously, I really did. I felt like the biggest loser. How could I spent 20 years sitting across patients trying to decide or to detect what's true about what they're telling me, help them make massive insights, and then I get into these relationships and I'm duped. Literally, my marriage, if you didn't know, if you haven't read the book Love You More or heard the Betrayal podcast, Betrayal Weekly podcast in October, or heard my story last summer or 2 summers ago, you may not have known that my marriage was a scam. The entire thing was a scam for money. My ex targeted me from a dating profile because I said I was widowed, and he suspected there was life insurance, and he and a partner, his girlfriend, decided it was a cool beans to go after a widow to see if they could get the money. That's the upshot of what happened to me. So not only did I meet and marry a cheater, but I met somebody who didn't even love me, and I couldn't detect that. I'll tell you, I'm feeling shame even now, and I'm feeling your tears. I felt stupid, like the biggest idiot with the biggest target on my back in the entire world. How could I have not seen that? Well, that's why I've spent so much time and energy really trying to hone down on what happens in these relationships so that it makes sense, not only to me, but also to you, because I know I'm not alone. I know you guys sit in the same position. I listen to you guys in the Toxic Free Relationship Club. I listen to you in the Healing Strong group coaching program. I listen to you in the New Powerful You group coaching program say the same things. You think, how could this happen? How could I've not? I'm a smart person. I do, make massive decisions all the time. Some of you are doctors and lawyers and judges. And even if you're not, you still have been running a home, and this is not your first go around meeting people. How could you have not seen that you've met somebody who is dangerous to you? Not just not good, but outright dangerous to you. So you internalize the shame and self-blame, and you end up thinking there must be something defective about you for this to happen to you. And then living in under all of that does devastating consequences to our nervous system. It causes massive disruption and hypervigilance, and the body doesn't just, easily recover from this. It actually now says, you know what you think is safe sometimes is not safe. Maybe you're not safe as often as you think you are. Maybe you're overestimating how, good and beautiful the world is. And so it goes into the state of disruption and hypervigilance. So you start bracing for the next shoe to drop in your life. And you start over analyzing every interaction, looking for some, hidden code, some secret message, some danger that you might not have spot that maybe you really should be there. And your core belief in that you are a trustworthy person, that you know what life is and what real is and what it's about, gets damaged. And you start to say to yourself, I can't trust myself. And maybe that's even the worst, most damaging impact of this whole catastrophe, is that you walk out not knowing, you walk away thinking, I can't trust myself. Because you probably overrid your initial instincts. You probably believed when you were told that your feelings were wrong. You probably detached from your own inner wisdom, and you believed this person because you were invested in making the relationship work. So bottom line, betrayal steals self-trust. That is a massive wound. It steals your self-trust. So you end up part of the stage getting out of stage 2 and moving into stage 3. I'm going to jump back to that. Is you have to move out of the survival mode, the shock mode, the broken mode, the blaming mode, to begin to make meaning and sense of it by getting into stage 3. That's why we get stuck at stage 2. So sometimes you meet people who have been in stage 2 for forever, for years, because they can't make that shift from stage 2 to stage 3. So what is stage 3? Stage 3 is the beginning of real transformation. And that's when you realize things have to change. And you're the one who's living the life. It's your life, and you're going to be the one who has to make the changes. You also realize you didn't cause the betrayal, but you've started being in survival mode, and survival mode is no way to live on a long-term basis. So you have to start to reclaim yourself and do things differently so that you can rebuild that breached self-trust. So you say to yourself, I can't go back to the way it was. And I don't want to live like this anymore. And this stage includes a lot of grief. There's tremendous rage. And at the same time, you start to get clarity. It is a messy, messy stage, but this is where you start to really reclaim yourself. I remember that for me was when I was wrapping up the book, the book Love You More. I was in the editing stages at that point, like going through it with my editor over and over. And I would still continue to make new ahas. And I literally at that time was just slightly as we were coming out of the pandemic, I would go to the pool by myself and sob with the clarity that I now had, the perspective that I had as a result of what I went through, the awareness of what had been done to me, the awareness of how it impacted me, and sitting with my own uncomfortableness of it. You know, I really felt deeply wounded and deeply broken, and sitting with that messiness of all of that. And when you are in the stage 3, that's when this transformation, this turning point starts to happen. And it moves you to stage 4. And stage 4 is the rebuilding. Now you're actively reconstructing your inner world. You're reconstructing new beliefs. You're starting to have new habits. And you're starting to find yourself in a new way. And you're starting to gently, carefully, tentatively build self-trust again. And this point, you start to learn that your body cues are telling you when you feel safe and when you're not. And you start to really hone in on finding people who align with your values and align with who you are. And you start to tentatively trust this. Now, I wish this was fast. This stage, I would say I'm still in. I don't think I'm to stage 5 yet. I think I maybe sometimes dip my little toe into stage 5 for a few seconds or a day, but I think most of the time I'm very, very much in a stage 4 stage. Let me say it again. I'm very much in stage 4. Why? Because I'm still learning to trust myself. I'm doing new things in a new way with people differently. I'm saying no faster. I'm asking for what I need more from those who are closest to me. I'm watching what people do when I ask for what I need. Do they show up? Do they not show up? I'm also setting boundaries and then watching what people do when I set a boundary. Are they supportive, or do they make me feel foolish for setting the boundary? I still am learning, and in fact, I've tried dating a few times, and I'll tell you, dating a romantic relationship is where I struggle the most. I really, really lose my identity when I'm dating somebody. And so for the past 15, 16 months, I haven't dated at all. I've not even put my toe out there or waved a flag or anything, because I'm still trying to rebuild trust in my ability to do it with those in my family, those are trust, like my family, my friends, those closest to me. Can I hold my boundaries with those that I trust? Can I not lose myself to those that I really care about? And as I learn to do that better with my closest relationships, like family and friends, maybe then I can start to do that in a more romantic sense. But I'll tell you, I know this is tough, but I definitely would say I'm in still rebuilding stage. And then stage 5 is where you have a new identity and that you become a new person. In Joe Navarro's book, their most dangerous personalities, which amazing guy. I had him on a podcast. If you want to check it out, you can find it on YouTube. There are 4 types of personalities that are the most dangerous. And in that book, he says, and I quote him in the Healing Strong Group Coaching. He says, the person you were before has died. They're gone. And a new person's going to arise out of that. That's how I feel. Somebody just recently said that the image they have of me is a phoenix. And I agree. I feel like what happened to me when I went through that also just going through widowhood, by the way, that felt like a betrayal of life. But it wasn't the same as being betrayed, because I didn't choose that. I mean, I didn't choose to have my late husband get cancer. I didn't choose to go through that ride. That it happened to me. So I don't feel blame for that. But that was painful. But then to have that relationship on top of it was extraordinarily painful. I felt like that toxic relationship burned me up. I was destroyed by it, just destroyed by it. And the person I am today, the core of me, my values are the same. My interests are kind of still the same, but the way I present to the world, what I do, I would have never been a content creator, the old me, the me before that I lost my late husband. That was not imaginable for me. Seriously, I even asked my kids, do you think that I would have done it? They're like, no, absolutely not. So who you see today has definitely is the new me arising out of the ashes of my burned life. So there are the 5 stages, and I have some big questions for you. Which stage do you think you're at? And why are you stuck at that stage? And what stage are you really trying to move towards? Because here's the thing. Getting safe. I see so many of you get stuck at just being safe. You start to see your world close down. You're struggling to leave the house. You're not making new friendships. You're definitely not dating. A lot of you have signed off dating ever again. And I'm not saying that's not a good decision. It may be the perfect decision for you. So please don't hear me weighing in on that. But what I've noticed is that your life has gotten smaller. And it's because you wanted to preserve safety. But being safe in that way isn't freedom. It's just another form of captivity. So I don't want you defining your identity around what happened. I don't want you to make statements to yourself like, I am never going to be vulnerable again. I'm never going to trust anybody like that again. Or I've sure learned my lesson. I don't want you to have a trauma-driven self, because here's 2 pieces to this that are really hurtful and bad about that. One, you're still giving that toxic individual control over who you are and what you're doing. They're still in charge of your life because you've let them put you into a new cage of fear. It's just different. Now you're not living with them, but it's still another cage of fear. You just swapped it out for the one that you were living with them to now the one that you're living with alone. The second one is you're not getting to fully be yourself. You're not fully expressing yourself. I want more than that for you. So stage 4 and 5, this is when you start to say, I'm not just healing from betrayal, but I'm becoming from someone new. And you don't stop, and you stop orienting your life around what happened. See, here's another tip. You're not orienting now, again, hear me. There are stages to this. If you just found out recently and you're just newly out, of course you're in stage 1 and 2. If you were in stage 3 or 4 or 5, I would wonder what's wrong. I have met individuals like that. In the office, they would come in and tell me a massive betrayal, and they would act so calm and together, and they would say it wasn't any big deal. And I'm thinking, no, it was a really massive deal. I'm not telling you to skip over 1 and 2 and early part of 3. But if you've been in 2 and 3 now for years, and you're still very much about what happened, and you're not building on who you are becoming, then there's something that's going wrong. So here's some things that you know that you're moving into stage 4 and getting out of 2 and 3. You are no longer asking why they did it. Instead, you're asking, what part of me needs to heal so that I don't ignore my intuition again? How should I rebuild a life that feels safe, nourishing, and true? You stop making the betrayal your whole story, and you start making yourself the center of your story once again. There are days now that I actually forget I was ever married to him. I forget he exists. It's as if it's like, once I got done with that book and I closed it and I put it up for sale to the world, it's like I closed it. And it ceased being my focus. It's like I purged it. I purged it out of my system. But please hear me. That took me 3 years to get there. 3 years of obsessive focus to the point I was pushing people away. I was so focused on it. But once I kind of got through it, I started feeling like that was not my full story. And it was like, it was in the past. And people were shocked when they listened to me. Like, that just happened a couple of years ago. Like, yeah, it did. But it feels like a real long time ago to me. That's how you know you're moving into stage 4. Here's another way you know you're moving into stage 4. You begin to question the identity you took on to survive. You start to question why you were the fixer or the pleaser, why you were over-functioning, why you were the one that always had to have it together. You start to realize that these were survival modes and they feel heavy. They don't feel aligning with who you want to be. You find them exhausted, and you start to get really curious about who would I be if I stopped trying to take care of other people and managing the chaos in my life? What if I stopped managing other people's chaos? This is the third thing you'll start to do. You're willing to embody healing, not just intellectual healing. What's the difference between embodiment of healing and intellectual healing? Well, you move away from just trying to learn everything you can about narcissism. You stop trying. Many of you tell me that you become a doctor in narcissism, like you're a PhD in narcissism. Yes, I get it. Certainly I've done that too. But in stage 4, you start to become an expert of you. You learn how to begin to ground yourself again, how to find joy again. You start to learn how to regulate your nervous system through breath work, not better boundaries. I hate the word better boundaries, through different kind of boundaries, through your creativity and through your deep compassion for yourself, through actual tools that help you. Okay. And number 4, you stop trying to win healing by doing it perfectly. I see so many of you struggle with this. Healing isn't linear, it's messy and it's convoluted. And you'll have one day where you'll step ahead and 2 days you'll step back. Maybe another day you'll take 3 steps forward and another day you'll take 1 step back, but it's messy and it feels like you're in and out, in that it just is not like a straight. And some of you will even say, I don't think I'm getting better at all, but I see you getting really, really better. I see the massive difference happening in your life, but you stop becoming preoccupied about perfection. It's not about perfection. It's just about moving forward. And here's the other part that you're doing. You're doing a lot of grief work about what happened to you. Your loss of the life that you thought you had, the loss of the person you imagined you were going to be in a relationship, the loss of the future you're going to have with this person, the roles that you're going to have, even the loss of yourself as you imagined it would be in this new future with this person. You're giving all of that up. It's a lot of grief work. But now you're not waiting to be healed in order to take up space in your own life. You're starting to walk and do new things. You feel shaky and maybe a little scared, but you're doing it anyway. And that's what bravery is. You're moving towards wholeness. So here's what stage 4 looks like that helps you to know that you're rebuilding your life. You're saying no now without over-explaining. You feel lonely and you don't immediately reach out for somebody to help you, especially that toxic person. You're reconnecting with friends that you lost touch of while you were in that survival mode, or maybe you're finding new friends now that you've moved into this new stage. You're feeling your emotions wholly without numbing or apologizing for them. You're starting new hobbies, rituals, or routines that aren't about just fixing yourself. And you're trusting your new inner wisdom, and you know that it matters, even if it's still really quiet right now in this stage. So, all right, we're going to turn it over to start taking your questions now. And I really would love to know what you thought as you heard me say all this. Where have you gotten stuck in this process? What's been hard about healing? Maybe you're scared and say, Kerry, you know what? You've described me. I'm very much in the victim mindset. I didn't know that I was. I didn't want to be in that stage, but I just don't know how to get out. I really don't know what to do or how to get out of it. So I want to begin to hear your questions and your struggles so that we can get better together. Yeah. So Erica says 2.5 months post 4 years of living hell, and it still gets me how terrible and great things were. Yes, it's common that these are a combination. That's what's so intoxicating about these relationship, Erica, is that they're probably both the most intoxicating, fantastic, over the top relationship you could have ever imagined having. And at the same time, probably a living nightmare that you couldn't imagine that you were experiencing. And that's what makes it super confusing, is because you couldn't believe it. You thought this person was one thing and they're not. They're a whole bunch of things. And it's just very, 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 confusing. Yeah. Yeah. So Double Blaze on TikTok said, someone told me that I was to play the victim, and I couldn't put it into words of the process I was in, that I was healing. When you're in that first few stages, guys, you are going to get a lot of pushback, because people often end up feeling like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with the fact that you're there and that you're hurting, and they want you out. And because it makes them feel inept and helpless and uncomfortable, they often will push you and then make it about you. And to say that you're playing the victim, that's a form of gaslighting. So I want you to know that that was really unkind and horribly cruel that they would do that to you, to say that to you. But I also know that you're in the early stage. That's where you should be. If you weren't, I'd be concerned. I would really want to know what's wrong. Then another question that came in right after that, I think is a really powerful question that a lot of us get asked. I had a close relative of mine survive something horrific, and she had this question, and that is, why does the memories come back? Why can't we just get rid of the memories? Because your body is trying to keep you safe. And so to me, having the research of memory is a sign that you're still working on some things. I still do. There, like today, I was working out today, and I realized what he probably would have thought as I was on the floor doing my exercises, and what he would have said to me. So what I do with it when it happens is I let the memories, now this is 6 years later. I let the memories come. I remind myself he's not in my life. It doesn't really matter what he thinks, and that I'm safe, and that it's okay for me to be vulnerable doing these exercises in this way. I don't need to be scared. I'm in my room alone. And, so that's how I deal with it, is I give myself permission to have the memory, but then I walk myself through, almost like I'm walking a child through something that's painful, and helping them put to terms with it. Oh, GMB, I'm so glad that you're in stage 3, moving to stage 4. That's awesome. And I see the question that Consider the Lilies is asking, and that is, how do we grieve well? Grieving is hard. A lot of what we're doing when we complain and we're shocked and we talk about just the intensity of what we're experiencing is it's actually grief. We're grieving. So I want you to try something like a little exercise with me. Next time you find yourself like acting shocked and talking about it excessively to something, and you're thinking, why am I saying this out loud? What's going on with me? I would love you to say to yourself, I think I'm grieving. And see how that feels, just to say that to yourself. Sometimes the acknowledgement that this is grief and not rage or anger or looking for closure or something else really puts a container around it that's very, very helpful and almost soothing in an odd way. So try that out. Next time you hear yourself like, I can't believe this happened. Who would do this? Why would they do this to me? What is that? Why are there such people in the world? If you say, you know what? I think you're grieving. Just say that and see what happens to yourself when you say that out loud. I think that really helps. The other thing about grieving well is this was a strategy that my therapist gave me in the middle of grieving for my lost husband who died from cancer. She told me to set a timer for 20 minutes every day. I embraced it. I turned on dark, morose music. I turned it up loud. I would find a certain chair that I would sit in, and I would set the timer in my watch, and then I would turn it on, and I would let myself cry. And I found a couple things. Learned a couple things from it. It taught me a few things. One was grief and pain is a feeling that gets exhausted and doesn't last all over and over and over. It exhausts itself. Just like smell. If you ever walked into a room that has a really bad smell, if you stay in that room, eventually your olfactory bulbs get fatigued and you stop smelling it. The same thing happens with feelings. Your feelings, you can't persist in an intense state of feeling. It will get fatigued and you'll start to feel, it will just kind of fade away. You won't feel better, but you'll fade away. The second thing is I started to find that if I said to myself during the day when I got upset, you have that appointment with grief later today, that I could push it all into that time slot. So it really helped contain the worst of my feelings, and I was able to have a safe space to put it. That really helped me a lot. So try that and see if that helps you feel a little bit better when you do that, and see if that really makes it kind of go a little bit better. Susan, I cannot believe your therapist told you to stop talking about it. Guys, if you have a clinician who tells you something like that, like, I don't know. One of mine did that with me too, and I fired her for it. She told me, like, I was talking about a painful family relationship, and she actually stood up, walked away, looked out the window, and said, "When are you going to realize this person's never going to change?" And I thought, maybe never. I don't know. But if anybody tells you that, you're seeing the wrong clinician. I would strongly recommend that you immediately fire that person and find someone else. Seriously. That's to me completely unacceptable. Thank you so much, guys, for this gift. John, I know you asked me a question. Let me see if I can go back to find it for you. So on TikTok, John asked me, There it is. I see you, John. I don't know if you're still here or not, but boy, I'm not finding it. John, I'm going to need you to ask me again. Maybe there it is. There it is. How do you deal with the anger of the betrayal, especially when your children are being alienated? Yet to me, that almost feels like double whammy pain, like pain on pain, to have you being wounded by someone harmful, and now they're twisting the relationships with your children and making it worse. Yeah, that happens commonly because toxic people are really powerful, and everyone around them kind of senses their pull and power, and they don't want to make them angry, and because they don't want to make them, because there's going to be consequences. So there've been consequences. They've watched the consequences with you, and they don't want the consequences, and so because of that, they tend to end up going with the difficult person just to keep the peace. I recommend that, again, deal with it the same way that I'm talking about this. But the problem is, John, is that it's an ongoing betrayal. You're still in the throes of losing the contact with your family, your children in the way that you want. So it's like a double layer. It's one of those nasty gifts that keep on giving, unfortunately. But I would recommend that you still deal with the grief in the same way. It's still grief. It's still loss. And it still causes intense rage. That's the other thing we don't talk about. Grief has a lot of rage in it. I was really angry when I was grieving. So if you've noticed that you're super angry, it doesn't mean it's not grief. Grief is not necessarily sadness. It's pain. Grief is intense pain. But I would recommend that you deal with it much the same. I've dealt with research tube said I've dealt with research, a ton of malpractice and covert narcissists posing as clinicians. Yeah, unfortunately, whenever there's power, a lot of power over people's lives, you're going to see toxic people move into those arenas. I'm thinking politics, medical field, legal field, obviously entertainment field, anything. Even religious fields, I hate to say that. Unfortunately, the church is full of a lot of narcissists because there's power. Nothing more powerful to say that God speaks to you or God speaks through you. That's very, very intoxicating. So be careful and don't exclude the fact that just because they have a lot of credentials and they have a powerful position does not make them a safe person. It really does not. So Maria asked, what about if my children are adults and they put their dad they put their dad on a pedestal? Is that what's happening in your life, Maria? It's common. Here's one of the nasty rules I have found true in toxic families. The healthier parent ends up the one with the most tenuous, tense, and fragile relationship because toxic people always make relationships about competition. And they expect you to choose, and it's a win-lose. And so they're going to put everybody around them in the position of choosing, even if it's unconscious. They still know that there's being a choice being asked. And unfortunately, the one who if you're the more stable person who's not going to go anywhere, and the kids innately know that about you, even adult kids, they're going to then choose the more toxic parent to preserve the relationship in order to avoid cutoff. Years and years ago, one of my first experiences was as a child psychologist. I was actually trained first as a child psychologist before I started working with adults. And I worked at a child psychiatric center. And one of my first patients had attempted to harm himself in a devastating way over the relationship with his mom. And I remember her visiting him while he was in the hospital. And this woman had not been a good mom to him at all. But you would think it was Christmas Day. Every time she came for a visit. Here is a woman who could not show up for him, did not know how to emotionally meet his needs, and yet he still stopped longing for her. So when we have toxic partners putting our kids in the middle of having to choose, they're going to choose the more fragile, toxic parent to preserve the relationship because no kid wants to lose any relationship with an adult. And if they know you're more stable and you're likely not to go anywhere, unfortunately, you're going to be the one who takes it on the chin for this, unfortunately. It is just one of those really nasty consequences of toxic families. Yeah, so Susan said, this is exactly how my ex is towards his kids. He holds out money, and because they don't want to lose the contact and the connection around the money, then they preserve the relationship. So this is a really painful one. Thank you so much for being here today. You have a long name that I'm going to not even try to say, but you're saying on TikTok, I'm the scapegoat and I just found out. I'm devastated because it's so shocking. Sometimes what we have happen in these relationships is that we have families or systems that are willing to throw us under the bus for a larger purpose. Never is never a good one. It's always a bad one because it makes them look funny, to make fun of you, because they know you're not popular and it's a great way to suck up. Just because they have it out for you because they're nasty people. I mean, it's often like for one of these awful reasons. And sometimes we know about it and sometimes we don't. You're, by the way, speaking to a scapegoat. I have been scapegoated many times in my life. It's always miserable, always, always, always miserable. And it feels very devastating because the people you think should have your back are the ones who actually are betraying you. It is a massive level of betrayal that is just super harmful. And then the inevitable question that gets asked next is, what do I do if I'm being scapegoated? Unfortunately, the scapegoat has the least power in the family or least power in the system. There isn't you're not going to stop the scapegoating. If anything, your cries for help and pleas just be turned into more fun and fodder. It just gives them more stuff to work with. So I usually recommend, this is the hard part, I usually recommend that you don't fight it, you just get out. There is really no good recourse to stopping it unless, here's the one caveat I think that it works when you're in these toxic relationships, and that is if you know somebody powerful near the pecking order in these relationships. If you look at this family system or this friendship group or whatever it is, you know exactly who the top dog is and who the bottom dog is. You're the bottom, but you know who's at top. So if you know one of the people at the top who has your side, they're an ally, if you can get them to put a stop to it, sometimes that will stop. But if they're not strong enough, then they'll get scapegoated too, and then they'll be out with you. So there are some people who will never take that step to siding with you because they know the risks are too great and they don't have enough power. It's amazing to me how sensitive we are to all these nuances, that we know these things without even knowing how we know. Like, we know who holds the most power. We know that they do. And we also know who's second, who's third, we know all of that. And so it really becomes, if you can get one of them to align with you, it really helps. But if you can't, my best recommendation, unfortunately, is that you just get out because you're not going to heal this situation. Yeah, I'm trying to look at any other questions. How long does it last for the kids to take it out on you? Patricia, it depends on the question. Like, are they taking it out on you because of past injury? Or are they taking it out on you because of what's happening with the alienating parent? If it's ongoing and that parent continues to play a powerful role in their life, it's not going to stop, unfortunately. I hate to tell you that. But if that other parent is stopping and they're still working through it, it really depends on your children's emotional intelligence, their ability to sort of step back and take a big look at the big picture and see it. Sometimes some people have that. Sometimes people don't have the ability to see it. So it really kind of depends. Dawn's asking, and this is going to be the last question for today, is it codependency when I push my needs to the side in my relationship only to be cheated on? Dawn, in fact, I hope you join me next week. I'm going to be going live again at the same time, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. my time at Central Standard Time. But I will be addressing echoism. This week is featuring on the podcast Lynn Strathy, the echo chamber, and she's talking about it. But next week, I'm going to really get into that more. She's proposing, and I really like this proposal, that it's not so much people pleasing, fawning, codependency, that's actually echoism. And echoism is what we learn either in childhood or adulthood from these relationships of how to submerge, suppress, delay our sense of selves for the good of the relationship because we're trying to preserve the relationship over our own safety. So we're going to really do a deep dive next week into echoism and help understand what's happening, how to stop it, how to get out of it, all the nitty gritty of that. I feel like the Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah, it does feel like the Count of, So much so. Susan, I see that your subscription benefits are ending. Unfortunately, on TikTok, I don't really have much of subscription benefit. If you guys really want better subscription benefits, please check out the ones on YouTube. Every week, I download an exclusive video that never goes public, and it is just for the subscribers on Substack or on YouTube. So if you guys would like to see I just posted today's for next week. It's with Sabrina Kerberg on toxic female relationships. So if you would like to have exclusive content that only those who are subscribing see, there's over 45 videos now. So yep, sorry about that, guys. So please check out the subscriptions. I can't say that word today. I'm having a lot of problems with words today. The subscription on either YouTube or on Substack. And I put those in my show notes on the podcast. I put the show notes everywhere. Hey guys, this was a big topic today. Thank you for buckling in and doing it with me, for staying with me. It was hard. I know this was hard. Some of this stuff is not easy to hear at all, but really ask yourselves about where you are in your stage of healing and why maybe you are where you're at, and look in what you could do to begin to heal. And research too, for example, I don't believe egoism has destroyed you, because you're talking to an egoist right here. I'm a big one. And I don't believe that you're destroyed. I believe that we've got to do a lot of hard work, but I think it's possible. So come back next week to talk more about that. And I can't wait to see you guys then. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.